Yeah, good morning, Michael. European markets are down across the board this morning, a 16-month low as Trump's tariff starts to bite. We've seen a mass sell-off of shares as panic intensifies about the possibility of a global recession. Now, European markets are still open, but London opened 5%, more than 5% down this morning. It's much worse on the continent. The Italian market opened more than 7% down, France 5%, and Germany 6%. And as serious as all this is, last week, these markets already took losses. Plus, there's real concern in Europe about the car market. 25% tariff that Donald Trump imposed on imports into the United States. That could impact hundreds of thousands of jobs in Europe. And as bad as it is in Europe, it is much worse in Asia. Every single Asian market closed down today. The Hong Kong market lost some 13% of its value. That's the worst since 1997. The Chinese market around 7% down. The Japanese market around 8%. And today, Donald Trump will speak to Japan's Prime Minister about this crisis. I imagine he's not the only world leader who's wanting to talk to Trump about all this.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, guys, we're going to be talking about Trump's tariff. I'm sure most of you have heard about the new tariffs he's imposing on other countries here. Right. And we're also going to be talking about the global reception of his tariffs.
Right, so in particular, we're going to be talking about Europe, countries like Germany to be specific, how these tariffs are going to affect them and how it affects you as a normal citizen in America, and how Japan and China, most importantly, received this tariff.
Right, guys, we have to keep in mind that all this is a global stage. That is, it seems like a war is happening and it's going to be affecting everybody, most especially the big countries in the global economic stage, you know.
Right.
But we don't want to talk a lot. Let's watch what we've prepared for you and then we come back and talk about it. Consider subscribing if it's your first time here. Also, let us know your thoughts and opinion on this comment section. Do you think that President Trump is on the right track? Do you think at the end of the day he has an end goal that is going to benefit the economy of America, or do you think that this is a slow slow and slippery slope, you know? Let us know in the comment section. Let's watch and then you come back with our commentaries.
Okay, major breaking news. Donald Trump has just single-handedly crashed the global stock market. So the US market literally just opened after the weekend of it being closed, and in the first few moments, all of the major indexes fell yet again, between 3 and 4%. That brings the S&P's three-day losses to around 13%. That's the biggest drop since the financial crisis of 2008. China's stock market, well, they suffered their worst single-day crash since 2008 as well. Hong Kong's stock market, they suffered their steepest single-day decline in nearly 3 decades. Taiwan had their biggest one-day drop in their history, flat out. Japan, they had to literally halt trading. Italy is down, Saudi is down, Germany is down, France, the UK, India, Australia, name a country, they are probably down. I mean, Russia, freaking Russia, they didn't even get hit with tariffs, yet they're down as well. And that's just Monday. So Donald Trump, seeing all the panic, all of the, it's a bloodbath out here, he said, do not panic. He said the United States has a chance to do something that should have been done decades ago. Be strong, courageous, and patience, and greatness will be the result. As things develop, and they will bloody develop, I'll keep you guys updated.
It is Black Monday 2025 edition. The stock market continues to get crushed as a result of the shocking tariffs imposed by the Trump administration last Wednesday. The Japanese stock market was down 7% today. The Shanghai Composite was down 9%. The S&P futures are currently down 3.6%. Bitcoin is at 76K, Ethereum's at 1,500, and Solana looks like it's barely holding on to $100. Personally, I think it's clear that Trump is intentionally crashing the stock market to force the Fed's hand. If the economy slides into a recession, one of the only tools the US government has is lowering interest rates, just like they did in 2008 and 2020. So why does Trump want lower rates? First of all, the US has $9.5 trillion in debt that needs to get rolled over in 2025. If interest rates are lower, that means they pay out a lot less interest. Businesses will also flourish because they can access more capital cheaper, they'll be able to hire more people and invest in more projects. It's also no secret that mortgage delinquencies are rising and credit card debt is at all-time high. Trump's not even trying to hide his real intentions. On Friday, he tweeted, "This would be a perfect time for Fed Chairman Jerome Powell to cut interest rates. He is always late, but he could now change his image and quickly." Because this crash is being almost entirely manufactured, I think we can pump back to all-time highs just as fast, and your signal for that will be if the Fed has an emergency rate cut. That being said, Trump is making a big gamble here. If the Fed stands their ground, the tariffs are going to cause an insane amount of damage to the world economy and even more so to Americans. Companies like Nike that rely heavily on cheap foreign labor have thinner margins than you might imagine, and a 46% tariff on all goods coming from Vietnam, which is where they produce all of their footwear, it's going to make their costs skyrocket. These tariffs will absolutely push some American companies to the edge of bankruptcy that otherwise would be okay. Personally, I think when the Fed does pivot, that these tariffs will be removed. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with these policies. Peace.
104% tariffs on China. That could be the reality starting this week, according to President Trump.
I have a great relationship with President Xi. I hope it's going to stay that way. I have great respect for China, but they can't do this. We're going to have one shot at this, and no other president's going to do this, what I'm doing. And I'll tell you what, it's an honor to do it.
So how do we get to 104% tariff? To the math. First, you got to understand these are just the new tariffs being put on China since President Trump took office. There are already existing tariffs on certain Chinese imports coming into the United States, but I want to focus on these new ones because that's where the escalation is happening. So in February, President Trump put 10% tariffs on China. Then in March, he put another 10% tariff on China. These two, he said, were because of fentanyl. Then last week, you remember that big Rose Garden ceremony? President Trump announced the so-called kind reciprocal tariffs. Remember that big chart? Well, on that chart, China was hit with 34% tariffs. And late last week, China saw that number and said, hey, we're going to slap the United States with 34% tariffs on American goods going into China. Well, last night, President Trump said, hey, China, I see that you retaliated against my 34% tariff. So unless you pull those back, I'm going to add another 50% to your tariffs. Now, let's just do the simple math. You add that all together. That's how you get to 104% tariffs. And as I've reported repeatedly, you and me, the consumer, is the one who pays that tariff. China does not pay that amount. The person who imports the item into the United States pays that amount. And do you think American importers are just going to eat that amount of cost? No! Maybe they'll pay for some of it, but they certainly will not swallow all 104%. That increased cost is obviously going to be passed on to you. Look, I know you're going to ask, well, how much does China tariff U.S. imports going into their country? That answer is very difficult to quantify because before this new round of tariffs from Trump, every single item that we imported from China had sort of a different tariff percentage. Remember that 67% number the president put on that big chart last week that China was charging American imports? Well, according to the Trump administration, that is not the tariff percentage China is charging U.S. imports. What you saw on that chart was a totally different thing. It wasn't tariffs. It was based on trade deficits. And for the record, President Biden also put tariffs on China too. He not only kept the tariffs that Trump imposed on China during his first term, but then he added very strategic tariffs on China. But his were targeted on things like electric vehicles, advanced batteries, steel, aluminum, medical equipment. And they didn't all just hit at once. They were phased in over 3 years. So under Biden, the tariffs were not like this massive sticker shock all at one time, like what we're seeing now. So what's going to happen this week? Well, tomorrow, Wednesday, and Thursday are going to be critical days. If China does not pull back its 34% tariff by tomorrow, starting on Wednesday, the United States is going to add that 50% tariff. Then also on Wednesday, the original 34% tariff on China and reciprocal tariffs on all those other countries will take effect. And then on Thursday, that's the day China will hit the U.S. imports with 34% tariffs. The White House claims leaders of several countries have already called President Trump to try and negotiate their tariffs down. China did not. So, is President Trump willing to negotiate? Well, he said no, then he said maybe. Today, he said he's not looking to pause his tariff plan. In the Oval Office this afternoon, Trump said two things can be true at the same time. He says it's possible tariffs will be permanent, and it's also possible that he'll negotiate. I know those two things contradict each other, but that's what he said. Bottom line here, I think we're just going to have to buckle up for another bumpy week.
I'm going to break down to you guys exactly what happened today, because this might have been the craziest day in stock market history. All right, let's go to the timeline. There's a chart behind me here. We're going to start in the morning around 10 a.m. At 10:10 a.m., rumors emerged that the White House was considering a 90-day tariff pause. 5 minutes later, CNBC reported that Trump is considering a 90-day pause on tariffs for all countries except China. Let's go back to the chart. As you can see here, off this news, the market absolutely rips to the upside off of this news. 10:18 a.m. The S&P 500 has added over plus $3 trillion in market cap from its low. 10:25 a.m. Reports emerged that the White House was unaware of Trump considering a 90-day pause. Where did this news come from? 10:26 a.m. CNBC reports that the 90-day tariff pause headlines were incorrect. 10:34 a.m. The White House officially called the tariff pause headlines fake news. Let's go back to the chart. Tariffs, the pause on tariffs is fake news. The market then tanks and sells off after they find out, or the market finds out, that this was a fake news release. 10:40 a.m. The S&P 500 erases minus 2.5 trillion of market cap from its high 22 minutes prior. Never in history have we seen anything like this, guys. Please be careful out there.
Just after 10 a.m., a tweet went out saying that the president was considering a 90-day pause on tariffs for all countries except for China. Shortly after that tweet went out, we saw the S&P, the Dow, and the NASDAQ all enter the green, and there were cheers here on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. But shortly after, the White House came out and said that that was fake news, that the president is not considering a 90-day pause for all countries except China. And then you saw markets go back down into the red. This is just a classic case of what happens when there's a rumor, an unfounded rumor, but just shows the desperation that investors have right now for some sense of an indication that this trade war may be pausing, or there may be a de-escalation of this trade war. But I was speaking to an investor earlier today who said that we could see this throughout the day. We could see little rallies as news started to trickle out about negotiations that may be happening between the United States and other countries. Now, that tweet about the 90-day pause is not true, but there are conversations going on with foreign countries and the United States about a de-escalation. Investors, though, really looking for some solid information from the White House, though, that tariff rates are going to be dropping, not holding steady, and certainly not escalations going forward.
We have major breaking news right now. The United States stock market is in free fall already. The Dow Jones opened about 1,300 points lower. The S&P 500 opened about 3.2% lower, and the NASDAQ opened about 3.9% lower. This is just the beginning of what could be a stock market crash today. One of the worst days for the stock market in recent American history. Stocks are plunging. I mean, it is bad, folks. It is not, and there's no sign of it getting better, because the Trump administration has repeatedly said that it will not be reversing its tariffs policy at all. And overnight, global markets crashed as well across the board, from Hong Kong to China to Taiwan to France, the United Kingdom, and elsewhere. Global markets across the world have plummeted because of the tariffs and what they are going to do to financial markets across the world, not just in the United States. I'm going to do a full breakdown on my Substack shortly, so be sure to subscribe for free at the link in my bio and follow along to stay up to date on all the news you need to know about. There'll be much more to come, I'm sure, very soon.
So guys, welcome back. I think some of the speakers here have been more than eloquent, and they have explained how these tariffs will affect people very well, right? And what I've come to realize is at the end of the day, these tariffs will bring greater costs to businesses, which will then be pushed down to American citizens because they're the ones who are consuming these products, you know.
Right, and let's also talk about how I'm sure you caught where somebody was talking about when Trump, but that was proved to be fake news. It was thought that White House were going to be putting a pause on the tariffs, and then what happened? The stock market skyrocketed, you know. But then when White House confirmed that was fake news and they didn't have any plans to pause, it dropped back down again, you know. So this just goes to show that a lot of people are depending and waiting on President Trump, and as of now it has been confirmed that while he's not willing to completely pause the tariffs, he's willing to negotiate with other countries, you know. And I feel like any war between superpowers is never good, because when you look at China and America, they're both superpowers in their own right now. Yeah, they need each other much as they don't, but they still do need each other in a lot of things, because even when we look at products that have been labeled made in USA or made in China, both places, whichever it has been made in, both places rely on imported parts in order to be able to finish their production. You know, there are some things that they have to import to finish, you know. So all in all, they all still do depend on each other, and if this trade war continues like this, I feel like we are going to be seeing a global effect where it's not only consumers in America who are going to be affected by this, but it's gonna be a global effect, you know. Because when you look at, somebody mentioned a very important company like Nike. Yeah? Nike, they big factories of theirs operate outside America. For example, the one that they operate in Vietnam, you know.
Yeah, and this is because of cheap labor.
Yeah, so you look at such a company, if they keep on putting heavy tariffs on them, because I feel like in today's society, people are getting to such a place where they have to choose between, am I going to eat, am I going to pay? A lot of people are living that in those conditions right now, where they have to choose, am I going to eat, am I going to pay my electric bills, am I going to pay my bills in general, or am I gonna spend over $100 looking for fancy things to wear, you know. So when you look at that, I feel like it will get to a place where a lot of people won't be able to be in a position where they're gonna be buying even those branded items like Nike, for example. Should those tariffs hit them, you know, they'll all in all choose to just stay the way they are, and those companies are gonna have to be finding a new way to blend in the new society that has been created, you know. I feel like I'm gonna take people back a little bit. When Trump was running for office, right now we don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, him imposing these tariffs. I guess we have to wait for the results for us to know whether or not it's a good thing. But when Trump was running for office, I feel like a lot of people were happy because, most especially, according to them, he was gonna better the economy and make
the economy more stable.
Most importantly, and a lot of people believe that Trump was gonna create jobs, you know. So right now, the question you're asking is, do you see a lot of people getting jobs, or do you see a lot of layoffs happening, you know? That is a question we also have to ask ourselves. Another thing, there are people who invest in such things like cryptocurrencies, you know, and such things. When Trump was campaigning, he used to talk about cryptocurrency a lot, and people were happy, especially those forex traders and cryptocurrency investors. They were thinking, because this is the only president who's actively had to appeal to all audiences, even the traders, and he was talking so much about in cryptocurrency investments, that they had hope that him coming into office would really help such industries, you know. But right now
we really don't know how this affects traders, because on TikTok I've seen a couple of videos. Some are even saying that when people are dumping their shares, this is the perfect time to buy them. But you know, for people who are trading, they know how how it works. As we are not trading, so we won't touch much on that, right? But all in all, I feel like this is just a game of waiting to see what happens.
Right, guys, 104% tariff on China. That sounds a bit excessive, you know, because it's like, how did you get to that point? Although there's a lady who explained it who explained very well how it got to that point, and I'm asking myself, if this becomes a thing, you know, I feel it's not funny, but it's kind of laughable, because it feels like between these two countries,
nobody wants to back down.
And the only person who's gonna be affected, I feel,
are their citizens.
Yeah.
Both Chinese citizens and American citizens.
Yeah. So the big question we're asking in today's episode is, what do you think is President Trump's end goal? Do you feel like at the end of the day, this is gonna be beneficial? It's gonna fix the economy, or do you feel like this is a slippery slope waiting to happen? Let us know, right?
Right. But then again, my thing is, when things like this happen, there's always someone waiting to gain. Exactly. Things just don't happen randomly. Even the global market crashing, someone is making millions from this crash. But anyway, what do I know about global markets? We'll just leave it at that for you to form your own conclusions, right? Yeah. So
yeah, guys, let us know what you think about this episode in the comment section. As usual, we want to thank you so much for joining us on this one. Let's catch you on our next episode. Consider subscribing if it's your first time here, right? And these tariffs, you could just let us know, have you, like, do you feel like it's gonna you're personally gonna feel it, leave alone the normal commodities like purchasing food or whatever? Do you feel like it has begun affecting you as a person? Because I know if there's a trader amongst us who's watching, I know they already feel the effect.
Yeah, but it's not only traders, just citizens in general.
Who buy basic goods that come from different countries, right? Yeah, so guys, we'll catch you on our next episode. Be sure to catch it, right?